I'm finding my vibe in this magical place, in frequency fluidity.
Well, hello there, and welcome to Frequency Fluidity with Jessie. Hey, that's me. So, today we're talking about catastrophizing, and I wrote this a couple of weeks ago and have not recorded it yet. And I think there was a reason for that. And that is because right now I am currently at a place where I could be catastrophizing. I'm processing, I'm struggling, but I'm not catastrophizing. And so I want to talk about what that looks like, what catastrophizing is, how it can be a trauma response, and this may be discombobulated. This may be a hot mess because yesterday morning, I found out that I may not have a job. And by the time this comes out, this problem will probably be resolved. And I'm trying to remind myself of that fact and not catastrophize. But I'm still in the middle of processing. And I thought, this is the time. Because mental health happens all the time. All the time. For those of us who struggle with it, it happens all the time. And right now I'm outside and you probably can hear the birds. And this is my favorite place to be in the evening. And I just sit and I watch the birds and I watch the clouds and I look at the sky and I think about the things that I'm grateful for. I remind myself that there are so many who are less fortunate than me, those who don't have supportive families around them, those who struggle, whose struggles are worse than mine, who haven't had 10 years of therapeutic work and growth and self-education, and haven't learned these skills and strategies yet. But I sat with it for about 24 hours. And that's okay, right? I am going to give myself grace because anybody in a situation similarly, when they are 50 years old or at any age, probably going to have some feelings, right? Like totally human, totally normal. I don't have to take it to level 10. So let's break down. I've used this phrase a lot and I'm going to continue to use it a lot. And so I thought it would be a good idea for me to explain it to you. And that's why I had written it a while ago. So what is catastrophizing? First of all, if you've never done it, go you. Like, I want to be you when I grow up because this is a trauma response that lived rent free and still resides there occasionally. It's a bitch, man. It's a tough one. So what is catastrophizing? It is a cognitive distortion where a person assumes the absolute worst will happen, even when being presented with limited information or low probability. So limited information is what I have right now with my current situation. And so I'm trying to focus on that aspect of it to remind myself it's a cognitive distortion for me to go worst case scenario all the time. Okay. It's your brain going to worst case scenario. For me, what does this look like? What did this look like? And what does it look like now? I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Um, all of the what ifs and the I have tos regarding anything and all the things. You Catastrophizing is putting everything at the same level of urgency and importance when things that should not be taking so much of your energy are the same as everything else that's going on in your life that is possibly and probably more urgent. And so you can't really distinguish between where you should put your energy and where you shouldn't, because you don't have the ability to recognize. Like, it's tough. It's really tough to explain. um let's talk about the word should. I would should myself to death. Man, I should have done this. I should have done that. I should have done this. I should have done that. I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to. Should and had, right? I had to leave that language behind, because that's when the rumination happened. And unfortunately for me, and probably for everybody else who struggles with this shit, it happens at night as I'm trying to go to bed, because of course that's the perfect time for your mind to become a bitch and tell you all the things, right? So it would just sit there in the loop and the loop and the loop and the loop, and then you just go down the spiral, and it's just mentally exhausting. It's mentally exhausting. I'm mentally exhausted right now just thinking about it. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So, this also showed up in my relationships for a really long time, because let's say I didn't want to have a disagreement ever, because I always thought of the worst case scenario if a disagreement occurred, which was that they're going to no longer love me and they're going to leave me, right? Conflict resolution was not a thing that I mastered for quite a while, and I'll be honest with you, it's probably not mastered yet, but it's a lot better than it was. Okay, it's a lot better than I'm much more aware of who I am and who I am at this point. And but in relationships, I would have these like grand scenarios that happened in it wasn't real life. It was just happening inside of my head. And then so I would play these conversations out, right? Because I was sure I knew what the response was going to be. And then when the response wasn't what I wanted, like, I didn't know how to respond because I hadn't played it out in my head. So anyway, that's okay. So this can be a learned response from past trauma. For me, I really feel like it was a lot of that emotional manipulation that I talked about, because I was always hyper vigilant and thinking of worst case scenarios so that I could be prepared. And this is also highly linked to anxiety, stress, depression, and can worsen chronic pain. So, if you don't know, I have Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disorder. So, all of the above. Okay, so the core elements of catastrophizing include jumping to conclusions, magnification, and helplessness, getting stuck in helplessness and rumination. That's that thing that goes from this and then it turns like this and then it just sucks you down, man. And so I want to talk about a couple of ways that this has manifested in my life. The reason that I share my stories again are because if I can help somebody in some way, that would be not worth it, but it would be Oh God, cut this part out. Okay. So I want to talk to you about how catastrophizing manifested itself in my life. So for a long time, the only way that I identified as was as a teacher. That was a big way that like I put myself in boxes. And so if I struggled in an area that I put myself into that box, when I got a bad review at work, it crushed my whole identity. And the subsequent story of what happened after that, which I will share another time, sent me into a breakdown. And it's because I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the skills to recognize that I am not my job. And I love being an educator. Don't get me wrong. Like education is my thing, but I'm not my job. And I'm not necessarily what other people think of me. Right. And I didn't have enough confidence in myself to push back against a narrative that was being set that I felt was unfair. And it led me to have a mental breakdown. And then I didn't work for a year. So catastrophizing can lead to a break when you're always thinking about worst case scenario. My blood pressure went up. My coping skills went down. My executive functioning went down. And it affected my teaching. So I needed to step out of the classroom. But I think catastrophizing was a big element of that. Okay. One way that this has manifested in my health is once again, I have an autoimmune disorder. And I mean, no, I don't need to say any more about that. So in relationships is probably the place where I experienced catastrophizing the most. I would lay in bed at night because, of course, and be like silently crying and weeping next to my husband, who had no idea what was going on in my brain. I would say things like, "Are you okay?" And I'd be like, "I'm fine." You know, like I didn't know how to express my emotions because literally I had a hard time identifying my own emotions. And so everything was on fire and chaos, and it took a lot of therapy to deconstruct that the way to handle it is actually to explain exactly what's going on in the moment. And so now if I'm crying, number one, he's going to know about it because I'm not going to hide it from him. And number two, when he says, what's wrong, I'm going to say, I really don't know what's wrong right now. I think I'm still processing, which is what I'm still doing from yesterday. I don't feel right now. I don't feel like, I can, now I have language to express what is currently going on. And that's one thing that therapy has really provided me, and self-education about mental health has really provided me is language and the ability to explain what was going on. Whereas I used to be at a point where I couldn't even like clearly identify my own emotions. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So let's talk about some strategies that I have created to overcome. And then we're going to talk about what do you do when you're, because I wrote this when I was clear-headed, I used to call it Jessie 2.0. It's like the version of me that runs great, that's running on all cylinders, that's having a great mental health day, right? So I wrote this when I was Jessie 2.0, and I wrote an addendum with the version of me that's currently going on to talk about, like, how do you handle it in the moment? Okay. So strategies that I have used to overcome is be brave enough to test the reality of your thinking. Use other people you trust if you need to. What does the actual information show? So this is where my husband and I are a really great team, because he is very logical and I am very, I have mood stability issues, and I can go off places that don't exist. And he's very logical and methodical and will, talk to me about, okay, well, is that true? Let's talk about that and let's look at that. And that slowed my brain down enough to be able to recognize that it's not true, right? That it's not necessarily true, that it might be a possibility, but it's not like the only possibility, like black and white thinking versus like gray thinking, right? And that's the catastrophizing. That's that black and white thinking, right? It can either be this or that, but that's not true. Okay. Decatastrophizing it. What is the most likely outcome? Like, if you logically think it through, what is the most likely outcome that's going to happen? Okay. Thought stopping. This, I'll tell you how I do this. Okay. So this is intentionally, so this is where mindfulness comes in, and we'll talk about that on a video. Intentionally identifying the spiral and refocusing on present actionable steps. So for me, nighttime is one of my hardest times. Most of my trauma occurred at night, as I think a lot of ours did, because the dark covers a lot. But I do things to set myself up to be able to sleep well. I dim the lights, but I have some kind of light, some ambient light. I set up relaxing music on the TV that has some sort of meditative sound to it. I don't bring my phone into bed. Before I go to bed, I do a little snuggle with my doggy, Zeus. And then I try to stop my brain in action. One of the things I've always done, sorry about the plane, our whole marriage is I will say, I randomly do lists in my head, like as I'm going to bed. And then I'll say to my husband, oh, hey, did you change the air filter today? And he'll be like, man, why couldn't you have asked me that at 5:00? But it's now we're in bed, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, I didn't. Or I'll be like, hey, did you forget to get, such and such? And he's like, oh, can you remind me tomorrow? That's not how my brain works. Like, when it comes is when it comes. You're going to get it when you get it. So take it or leave it. So that still happens, but I don't sit there and list and catastrophize and think about all the things I should have done that day that I didn't do that day, and how I'm a failure because I didn't do those things, and how tomorrow's not going to be better because today was so bad and tomorrow's just going to be, you know what I'm saying? Like, all the negative shit that goes on inside of my head. So, but I don't list or catastrophize, and I've learned to give myself grace. And you can too. Literally, that was the ending of my script. So now let's talk about what happens when your world gets flipped upside down and you end up living in Philly. No, let's talk about it. So first thing I want to do, the whole thing, I want to normalize it. Everybody goes through this. This is not a me thing. I am not that unique. I guarantee you there's way more of you who feel this kind of stuff that, no, especially in the world we're living in now. So I'm just wanting to normalize that we struggle as human beings, and it's okay. You're not perfect. You don't have to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. We all struggle. It's okay. So my family, what I have found is, since I have learned and I have been vocal. Do you hear the birds? That's my favorite part. It makes me giggle. Sorry. Because I've been more vocal, because I've been vocal about my mental health, the people around me are showing more empathy and more understanding, because I don't hold things into myself. They see that something's wrong and they say, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, not doing that great right now. Working on it. I'm processing, but not doing that great right now. My son kept asking me, do you want to play a board game? Do you want to come watch TV? Do you want me to make you something to eat? I mean, very, very sweet. He's grown. But I was, I politely declined. I kept my boundaries. I didn't feel like I had to do something to make other people feel better, because in the moment I needed me, right? I had to take care of me, and me right that minute didn't want to play a board game or watch TV. I needed to sit in it, right? I needed to feel it and sit in it, be uncomfortable and feel it. And it's okay. I'm still here. I didn't explode. Shit didn't happen. You know what? It's going to be okay. So, the biggest thing is, I'm not in bed right now. And for me, that is a motherfucking win. Because let me tell you how many times catastrophizing has been my mate in that bed. I have gotten in with it, snuggled in fucking tight, and it won't let go of me. So I'm not in the bed. I took a shower. I got out of the bed. I took my pills this morning. I put food in my system. I took a shower. Phew. So I'm not in bed. It's a win. That's one thing that I'm proud of myself for today. Not showering is okay. Like, it's okay. Like, normalize that it's okay when you're feeling like shit. Like, I will tell you that if you just get in the shower, it's so much better. But if you don't, give yourself grace. It's okay. People around you are still going to love you. You're still a worthy human being because you didn't take a shower. You know what I'm saying? Like, learn to put it in its place. Learn that it's not a catastrophe. Do you hear the baby birds? Okay. I started shooting myself and I stopped. So I tried to make myself wait, to not be reactive, to focus on other things and give myself grace. But what I realized is that the reason I'm not catastrophizing is because I've spent the last 10 years creating an environment where if something goes wrong, the people around me support me, and the systems that I've put in place are going to help me get through. This is why it's so important to do the work, because when you're in a moment of turmoil, and they're going to happen, they happen every day. When you're in that moment, you have to have those skills on deck and be ready, right? That's why it's so important to do the work. That's why therapy is so important, to break down the things so you can set up the steps to set yourself up for when life fucking hits you over the head, because it does. Okay. My lyrical link is from Unwell by Matchbox. I'm not crazy, just a little unwell. I know right now you can't tell. Stay a while, maybe then you'll see a different side of me, right? Staring at the ceiling, making friends with shadows on the wall, all the things. Yeah. There's so many others. Please drop yours down below. My literature link is a book called What Do You Do with a Problem? This is a beautiful visualization of how when you don't handle a problem, it gets bigger and bigger, and how you worry, and how the more you worry, the bigger your problem gets. You wish it would disappear. You try everything to hide from it. And the more you avoid it, the more it's everywhere. God dang, doesn't this sound like catastrophizing? I couldn't take it anymore. This has to stop. Maybe I was making my problem bigger and scarier than it actually was. Shut your face. Okay? That's amazing. So he faces the problem, and what he finds is that it has something beautiful inside, which is an opportunity. This teaches our children that, yeah, we're all scared. But when we catastrophize, we miss out on things. They take us out of our character. They make us act in ways that aren't true to our nature. And if you deal with your problems and you embrace it, then there may be an opportunity there for growth, for something more beautiful. I don't know. I'm still processing. Thank you for sticking with me. And remember, you're not alone. Remember that we're here for each other. And that until next time, always remember you have the courage to be brave and the ability to heal. Peace.